Hi, welcome to this week's With Liberty and Justice for Some. I'm Congressman Mark Pocan. With me today for our one question is the General President of my union, the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, and that is Jimmy Williams. Jimmy, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Congressman.
So, Jimmy, my question to you is, if you had the power to change any one federal law, you don't have to worry about what Mike Johnson thinks or what Donald Trump, you just go in there, you're going to press a button and a law is going to be changed. What would that one law be, and why would that be the one you would change?
I would repeal Taft-Hartley, and I would repeal it, and throw it into the trash bin of history. Taft-Hartley created right to work. Taft-Hartley imposed sanctions against union organizers. Taft-Hartley has limited the ability for the organized labor movement to organize workers en masse. And I would repeal Taft-Hartley tomorrow, throw it into the dustbin of history like every other Jim Crow era law that was passed to hurt working people in this country. And we would move forward with building an organized labor movement that can truly work for working people.
I'll tell you right now, Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are not going to like that.
No, and that's why we have to do it. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. That's a great answer. Repeal Taft-Hartley. Thank you so much, Jimmy, for being with us today. All the best. If you look at what the Trump administration has done so far this year, there have been a whole lot of attacks on a lot of different issues, but perhaps none have been attacked as aggressively as environmental protections. Both the Republican-led Congress and the Trump administration have inflicted serious damage on environmental protections that we previously had in place, as well as putting new regressive policies into place nationally. We have one planet. We're already seeing significant signs of environmental degradation due to poor policy decisions. And if we don't reverse these actions soon, our future will look very different, very dark, and sooner than we think. Fortunately, there are people who make their daily mission to fight against these negative changes. And one such person is Pete Maysmith, the president of the League of Conservation Voters. He's been at the forefront of the environmental leadership movement for over 30 years. Pete, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here, Representative Pocan. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, tell you what, tell us in your own words a little bit about the League of Conservation Voters.
Sure, happy to. So the League of Conservation Voters, or LCV, is a national organization that exists to solve the climate crisis. We focus on, moving towards clean energy, cutting carbon emissions. And I think the couple of the things that really make LCV, we've got a lot of great allies. They do awesome work. What makes us a little bit different is, one, we do politics. And so, at different times, we can have conversations about elections, and we really work to make sure that pro-climate champs get elected to office. And then once they're in office, make sure that those electoral wins turn into good policy outcomes for all of us: clean air, clean water, protecting our communities, tackling environmental racism, which is all too prevalent in our world. That's one. And then the other thing is, we're part of this network that we call the Conservation Voters Movement, where we have 33 state affiliates all around the country, including in Wisconsin. Wisconsin Conservation Voters, as you well know, one of our absolute strongest affiliates. Carrie Schumann has been running that for a long time. She is amazingly talented, and her team with her. And so we work with our affiliates all around the country to build power from the states up and bring that into DC and get to work with you, and obviously lots of your colleagues, of course, in the House, and then of course over on the Senate side. So that's a little bit about LCV.
Yeah, so that is you're kind of the political side a little more of the environmental movement, but you have a voter action fund that keeps track of voting records for members of Congress. Yeah. You have a national environmental scorecard, I believe it's what it's called, but you also have a list, and I've always enjoyed the Dirty Dozen of politicians with especially bad records. Tell us a little bit about the Dirty Dozen.
Well, I will tell you about the Dirty Dozen, but wait, I want to go back to the scorecard because you're gonna, I think like this. We keep score for all the environmental votes in the Congress, in the House, and the Senate. We keep score, and I'm sure my guess is this. You have a 98% lifetime score on our scorecard. So thank you. That means that you stand up for, and your constituents know this, you stand up for clean air, clean water, tackling the climate crisis and everything. So I just want to make sure all of your listeners know that you get a heck of a good score.
Well, and to that, I think you had over 300 votes that you've kept track of since I've been in Congress.
Yep.
And actually, I'd probably be closer to 99% if it wasn't for I was gone for 2 months having an open heart surgery, and you guys nicked me for it. But that's okay.
Representative Pocan, all I can do is apologize. And I knew as soon as I said 98, you were probably going to tell me it should be 100. To all of your viewers and listeners out there, trust me, you are an environmental champ, and we are deeply, deeply appreciative of your leadership. And no joking. I mean, we're just deeply appreciative.
No, thank you.
So thank you. Now but you asked me about the dirty dozen.
Yeah.
I don't want to skip past that. So every election cycle, we identify 12 people in office.
Mm-hmm.
They could be members of the House, your colleagues. They could be members of the Senate. They might be governors, maybe a former governor, for example, in your state, just to take an example, not your current governor, former, going back now, 8+ years, I guess, or so. We identify them as being both terrible on the environment and as people that are politically vulnerable, and that what we say is, hey, these are the dirty dozen, and we need to go unelect them and replace them with pro-climate and pro-environment champs. And so we like coming up with the dirty dozen every year or every election cycle, I should say, and then making sure that, we spread that information far and wide. So it's a really good tool to educate. It's both fun, but it's serious because it's an opportunity to educate voters about their elected member in whatever, office, as I just said, who are really terrible on the environment and that they got to go.
Well, and that's important because so often a scorecard will show you how someone votes, which is obviously very important.
Sure.
If you're out there actively trying to undermine the environment even more than just the voting record, which many of your most of the dirty dozen folks are, they should receive a special designation. So that's why I've always liked it, because it's, I think, smart and savvy to actually uplift the worst perpetrators that are out there and make sure everyone knows it.
I'm glad you like it. And we think it's a really important tool for sure. And that's one of the things that we believe to be so important, is that the more people know about, as you said, how their member of Congress is voting and what they're doing on environmental issues, the more educated they are. Yep. That's just going to help us all in the long run in terms of making sure that we've got strong pro-environment leadership, whether it's in the House or, of course, in the Senate as well, or also at the state level. That's what Wisconsin Conservation Voters does. But, the governor and the state legislature in your home state. So, one of the things that we're doing right now is, you, of course, obviously know, I know you fought against it, but Republicans passed a budget reconciliation bill, the so-called one big beautiful bill. We call it the big ugly, just for the record. And we're doing an accountability program, again, that's educating the public about what the consequences of that piece of legislation are going to mean for them. Short take, higher costs, including utility bills, which connects into clean energy. You and I can talk about that in a little bit if you're interested to expand on that. But I mentioned that because I think there needs to be consequences for the decision to support this atrocious budget reconciliation bill back in June and July.
Yeah, I want to break out some of those in a little bit and talk through them. And I agree with you. Just today I was doing some national radio, and as much as people want to talk about Epstein files, a lot of other things, I want to talk about the big ugly as well, because what's in there is what most people think about when they're at their kitchen table, right, in their families.
That's right.
Right. And that's
right.
I think going to have the staying power, the lasting power, and what they did environmentally is awful. So we'll come to that. One last question about you, if I can.
Sure.
Just what brought you to the environmental space, and where'd you get your start doing this?
Yeah. I'm a Coloradan, and so I grew up in a beautiful state, and just experiencing everything that the Intermountain West in Colorado has to offer. Our mountains. I was just in Colorado. I'm in DC as we have this conversation, but I literally flew back last night to spend some good time with friends and family there. So our mountains and our rivers rivers in our forests, and so much more. I grew up around that. But then the other thing, Representative, is that I grew up with a mom who was very active in social justice. This is mostly around the women's movement and the peace movement, in the 70s, late 70s into the 80s, right? And the reason I mention that is because what I learned from my mom is if you don't think something is right, you can complain about it at the dinner table. That is a totally legit. We all do. You can do that. But then you got to get up the next day and you got to go out and do something about it.
Yeah.
And she instilled that in me and my younger sister. And so it just kind of became, but beautiful environment, Colorado, got to be, politically active, social justice, active. You put that together. And this is the only career, I'm going on, 33 plus years. This is just what I know and what I do. And so that's how I came to be here.
No, sometimes it's nice for people to know the various routes. Often, we just had an intern lunch here, and people sometimes are wondering whether they want to run for office, whatever. I'm like, it's not just about campaigns and that. It's about the advocacy groups. It's the groups that, it's inside, outside. I don't love those terms, but, I'm fortunate enough to have a vote. But, the way we motivate votes is by getting people around the country to contact their elected officials. Those groups are so integral to everything that happens. And, you are obviously, your League of Conservation Voters is one of the biggest heavyweights in the environmental space.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And yeah, we, it was Lincoln that said, without public opinion, you can't do anything. And with it, you can do everything, right? And that's part of our job, is to mobilize, educate, mobilize the public. Sometimes it's in an electoral context, vote out that dirty dozen person who's terrible and vote in the champ. Sometimes it's not about elections, though. It's about getting people to be active and engaged and speak up and call offices like yours and, obviously your colleagues, of course, and say, hey, please stand up for the climate. Please stand up for clean air or clean water by voting yes on this or no on this, obviously, depending on what the issue is, of course. And that's our job, and doing that in partnership with our state affiliates, again, like Wisconsin Conservation Voters in your state. It's both really important work, and candidly, it's work of joy as well. It sings to our hearts, I think. I can speak for my colleagues when I say that.
And those calls matter. Every elected official, doesn't matter of party. We get I think a weekly report of whoever contacted our office and what the major issues are. So the more you're doing that, the more impact you're having, because, they need to know if they vote for the big ugly, that there's a consequence to the environment, right? And that they're going to have to answer for that between now and next November. I hate to even have to ask this question, but I figure I should. Is climate change real?
Well, I'll let you know it is. Here's just the latest example. Obviously, the science tells us overwhelmingly, without any shadow of a doubt, that it is. But I mentioned, I'm a Coloradan. I said I just was back last night from being there with my wife, and we have a young daughter. And I went all over the state, seeing friends and family. I was in Denver and Estes Park, in Basalt, Aspen, anywhere on the western slope. And I'll tell you what, we lost a couple of days to wildfire smoke.
Yeah.
Because there's a bad fire in Colorado. There's several fires, and one in particular that's bad. And I grew up in Colorado. Got two older girls that are raised in Colorado, and now still spend a lot of time there. And it is markedly different. It is not the same. Of course, fires have happened for millennia in our forest, and that is to be expected. But what's happening now, the fire seasons are longer. They're more intense. The fires that burn are bigger, harder to control, and more destructive to human health and homes and life. And even if, it isn't a fatality, when wildfire smoke blankets the state and it is unhealthy, the readings for like 163, 164, on that scale. I mean, it was going into the dark red. It's not healthy to be outside. And so then that starts to take away the experience of what it's like to be able to experience the outdoors. That's just one example. The floods in Texas, the fires in Los Angeles at the beginning of this year, flooding in the upper Midwest, in and around where you and live and throughout Wisconsin and other upper Midwest states. And the examples go on and on and on. Climate change is real.
Yeah, I knew we both knew that, but I thought I should pose the question. We just had in Milwaukee up to 11 inches of rain in some areas. It was the biggest rainfall. In fact, it was within less than, I think, a tenth of an inch of a record rainfall in 1940, so over 80 years ago. And we here in South Central Wisconsin just had all the Canadian fires.
Right.
That's now a little bit out, but for a while, it gave you a beautiful sunset, but you can imagine what that's doing to your lungs at the same time when you're having that happen. So let's talk about some of the different policy things out there that I think have an impact. And let's start right where you were just at, which was what they just did with the Big Ugly, which is really rolling back the Inflation Reduction Act. Let's start with that Inflation Reduction Act. Yeah. Why was that important, and what did it do? And that was an act that happened in the last Congress.
Yeah,
Congresses ago. I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. So the Inflation Reduction Act was the most significant piece of climate change legislation passed anywhere in the world, not just here in the US. And what it did was say, we are going to make sure that renewable forms of energy, wind, solar, storage like batteries, many other, types, that it is going to be able to grow and to thrive here in the US. And that by doing that, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to create jobs, good paying jobs, all throughout the country. We're going to tackle costs for people because as we talk about this, we'll get more into this. Costs are too darn high everywhere for everybody. And so let's make sure we're using the cheapest and fastest energy out there, which is in fact clean energy, renewable energy. And by doing all that, we're tackling the climate crisis. So you're creating jobs, dealing with affordability, cost, and we're moving towards where the future. I mean, you asked me, in jest a couple, is climate change real? Yeah. Here's what's happening. The world outside the US is going to own the future in clean energy. China is just whooping us. That's terrible for our economic security, certainly for our environmental security, and really beyond just economic, but ultimately probably military security. It's just a terrible thing to seed the future. And the Inflation Reduction Act was saying, we're going to be leaders in tackling the climate crisis, creating jobs, and tackling cost here in the United States. That's what the Inflation Reduction Act was. Yeah.
And we helped incentivize that wind and solar for individuals, but also, utility companies and others were using that. It was lowering our rates, so the out-of-pocket costs are going to go up. I think I saw $400 a family on average because of the Big Ugly that they passed, eliminating some of those. But people still can, for a short amount of time yet this year, take advantage of some of those credits. And we definitely want to make a final plug for that because I know I have 8.5 kilowatts on our house, and that month when I get the $13 bill, I'll tell you, there's nothing like getting a $13 utility bill,
Feels pretty darn good, doesn't it?
It does.
Our home in Denver, same thing, solar on the roof and you get that sunny big stretch, which in Colorado you get for months on end, mind you. And you get an $8 or a $13 or a $15 bill. Boy, that's nice on the pocketbook. That's really nice. And the Inflation Reduction Act exists in part to address cost. And that's what's so really just crazy about the Big Ugly, the reconciliation bill, is 93% of all new energy that was brought on the grid last year was wind, solar, batteries.
Wow.
So even if you're not into renewable energy from an environmental or climate perspective, I think you should be, but okay, maybe you're not. Do you like cheap, fast to get on the grid energy? Yeah. Everyone should like that. Everyone should like that because we know that demand is surging, right? Data centers and AI. I know data centers in Wisconsin. A big deal. It's a big deal in many, many states around the country. These extreme weather events, That causes a demand surge in energy. We're electrifying things, which we should be doing. That causes us to need more energy. Let's power it with the cheapest, fastest form of energy: wind, solar, and batteries. And what the big ugly did was try to tear that down, stop that. The end result, that you do not need to think a lot about economics and to have a PhD in economics. They're taking supply away. Demand is surging. Guess what? It's going to cost you more money. It's going to cost your family more money. It's going to cost small businesses more money. It's going to cost big businesses more money. $400 a year, as you said, for that's just for a family. Obviously, right. Businesses, use more energy for the most part than families do. So they just made, Republicans who voted for this bill, just made life more expensive at the exact time that we need to be trying to lower cost. They're jacking it up. Shame on them.
Well, and two other things too, I think they're worth pointing out. When we're using some of the fuels from overseas, we're often in areas that are some of the most war-torn areas that put our own sons and daughters at risk. And the jobs are here in the United States on these things. You're not, building a windmill in China in order to get power here. You're building it in Iowa, and you're putting it up in Iowa. And the same thing with solar. You're putting it in other than a lot of the panels, granted, have come from China, but that's changing. And more things are being made here. And that was the whole idea. So it's costing us jobs, and it's also part of our foreign policy.
You couldn't be more right. That is entirely accurate in terms of, a lot of the building that was happening, the manufacturing happening in China and elsewhere. The Inflation Reduction Act was manufacturing policy in the sense that there was strong incentives to bring the production of the solar panels, the batteries, the wind turbines, and much, much more, all the components, right? To bring it here to the US. And you know what that does? You said it. Creates jobs.
Yeah.
Good paying jobs that people can go out and sustain their family on, roof over the head, food on the table, take a vacation, to things that we all want to do with our loved ones, for our loved ones, with our loved ones, and in our communities. Those are those good paying jobs. And you're totally right about national security. Why are we putting our troops in harm's way to go, fight wars or actions in places because oil is there, or because other natural, fossil fuel resources are there? Again, it makes no sense. And when I say it makes no sense, I should fill in the end of that sense. It doesn't make any sense, but they did it. Republicans who voted, and Trump, who voted for the bill, or in Trump's case, signed it into law, because they're giving tax breaks to their buddies, to their billionaire crony buddies. A lot of them are big oil CEOs, I might add. Mm-hmm. They don't need another, $100, $200 million, $1 billion. And that's the reason that they did it. And it's shameful.
So help me out on this part of the bill, or if there's other actions that they've done around, we were trying to help incentivize more electric vehicles. We just got a second electric vehicle in our household. Nice. And, it's kind of fun now. I don't ever have to go to a gas station unless I'm getting a coffee. And even that, I make at home usually. So I love it. Yeah, it's nice to wave goodbye. But I was spending between $150 and $200 a month on gas. I was looking at the bills. All right. So, that's just completely gone now. But we were helping incentivize those charging stations and other things. What happened either through that bill or other actions? Anything that's going to help, that's going to unfortunately slow down that forward movement, or what should we be looking for there?
Well, so I guess a couple of things. The effort to build charging stations, just to talk about electric vehicles for a little bit, that largely happened through the bipartisan infrastructure.
That's right. That's right. We did that.
Which is fantastic. Again, separate from the Inflation Reduction Act, but very, very important. I really appreciate you raising it to make sure that we're building out a charging infrastructure. Mm-hmm. I used to own an electric vehicle, about to buy another one. And you're right. Fun to drive, whiz right by a gas station, don't have to spend a penny there, right? They don't break down. You don't go to the shop,
Yeah,
right?
there's
It
no
just
oil change. You don't pay for the general maintenance of a normal
no,
vehicle.
you don't. And I'll tell you what, when the light turns green and you touch that
Yes.
accelerator, boom, you're
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yep.
they're fun. They're
Yeah.
fun in addition to all the other benefits of it. So yes, through a couple different programs or actions, some at the agency level, Department of Energy, and elsewhere, there again have been attempts to slow that down. Now I'm the build out. I mean,
Mhm.
I will give a rare piece of kind of good news on this front is that just today, this morning, there is reporting that the National Environmental Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, excuse me, acronym that doesn't matter, is like actually getting mostly, not entirely, mostly back on track.
Good.
And
Good.
that so we may start to see what happens is money goes to the states and the states, then fund these. And
Mhm.
that so hopefully we will start to see money start to move out the door
Good.
because we just need more charging infrastructures.
Yeah.
Infrastructure. It's getting a lot better, but we're not done. We're not close to being done. So hopefully we'll have a piece of good news when it comes to that.
Well, and that technology also is changing in a good way. I think I can do a 10-minute charge and get 85 miles out of it if I need something. That's going to get me most wherever
Sure.
I need to locally. So
Sure it is. Sure it is. I mean, really, it's not that much different than stopping at a gas station
yeah,
and filling up, except it's a heck of a lot cheaper.
right.
And all the other benefits that we talked about. Not to mention, it means that we're tackling the climate crisis. And I mean, we
Yeah.
can't lose sight of that. This is good economic policy to do clean energy, whether it's electric vehicles or wind and solar. It's good economic policy because of the jobs and tackling costs, as you and I were just talking about. But let's not forget, we're warming our planet in dramatic ways. We talked a little bit about wildfire smoke and floods and rainfall in Milwaukee, et cetera, fires in LA. And the only way to tackle it is to cut our carbon emissions. So
Yeah. No, so help me with this one. I truly do not understand. I guess I do a little bit, but for all their terrible reasons, why there's fighting cleaning up PFAS, forever chemicals that are polluting lands, and we try to do simple things. It's in everyone's district. It's something, or almost everyone's district. It's something that clearly, who wants pollutants that cause cancer in their district? And yet we fight to try to get funds to clean up PFAS sites. Help me with this. Try to help me understand this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, clean water, of course, is such a bedrock
Yeah.
value. We all need it. We all want it for
Right.
very obvious reasons. We all need it. And so when there are these forever chemicals that have really become insidious, as you said, really throughout the country, there's places where it's worse than others, including, I think, some places in Wisconsin. But be that as it may, I think there's a couple of things at play. I mean, there's almost kind of an inertia, right? I mean, some of this comes, say, from the military and cleanup of bases and not wanting to put time and resources into that. And then I think, the biggest thing is that a lot of the manufacturers, a lot of the companies that are responsible for PFAS pollution, they don't want to pay to clean it up. They don't want to be liable for it. And so, look, my 11th grade social studies teacher way back, in high school, when he was talking about an issue or this or that, he pulled out his wallet from his back pocket and he said, if you're not sure what's going on, follow the money. Yeah. Right. And I mean, that's, we all have heard that Jerry McCracken was not the first person to say that, maybe first person that really resonated with me. And so I think you see some of the economic interest and actors that don't want to be on the hook for cleaning up. The problem is if we don't clean up, we're all at risk. Ourselves, our families, our kids, our communities. And this is what we do as a country. We step up. And we did that in the 60s and the 70s of the Cuyahoga River on fire and clean water. We did it in the 80s with the smog and dirty air. And, we just have to keep tackling it. That's what we do. So why we're scared to take on hard challenges like this, it's disappointing and frustrating to see, but we're going to make progress on it.
Good. Now, I know League Conservation Voters is especially concerned about public lands. No question. We want to protect water and land for future generations. But there's been a lot of attacks on this front we've seen out of this Congress and this administration. So what's happening good, and probably the longer list, what's happening bad right now on that front?
Yeah. Well, the bad, I'll start with that and let's go to good. The bad is that this administration is just falling all over itself to open up our public lands to more drilling, to more mining, and just, some of the places where it doesn't make any sense to have a natural gas well or an oil well or a coal mine. Logging is the case, maybe in some instances too. Just throwing open the doors and basically telling the companies that want to come in and make money off of drilling and mining on our public lands, kind of come on in. Whether it's lease sales, whether it's reduced, permitting processes, they're just throwing open the door. So that's deeply frustrating and something that we work to stop just as much as we can. I will say that there is that there was some good news coming out of the reconciliation bill,
Good.
ugly, as we've been talking about. And of course, I know you know this, but make sure your viewers and your listeners know, is that there was an attempt, are you ready for this? To sell off some of our public lands.
Yes.
This is our heritage. This is for all of us to go. You want to hunt? Great. You want to hike? Great. Fish, camp, take a short walk. Hike for a week. People do. I don't care. Go do something in our public lands for everybody. Have a picnic. It doesn't matter. To sell some of those off to developers, by the way, follow the money again, to developers. And that was defeated. Let's give credit where credit's due, on a bipartisan basis. And it was Republican senators in the West in particular, not just senators, some members of the House too, who stood up and said, we're not okay with selling off public lands. So that was a good example. And then, we just did a series, or we're in the middle of a series, I guess I should say, of hikes that we're doing. We did a solidarity hike in Colorado, just to turn people out. We talked about public education being part of what we do at LCV, just for people to come out and say, wow, look at this, it's really beautiful. Let's go out and enjoy it. And so just to kind of raise awareness, and one of your colleagues, Joe Neguse, Representative Joe Neguse, he was at the hike, and so had some good energy, and people just got out and enjoyed the day. So we're doing all we can to raise awareness about our public lands, fight the political attacks like the sell-off, and then do all we can to stop this administration as they try to throw open the doors. So it's a bonanza of drilling and mining on our public lands, and doing all we can to stop that.
Yeah. Now, also, this isn't as much the Trump administration, although they've been supportive, but we know this Congress is incredibly dysfunctional, right? We're not exactly going to pass record levels of legislation, but they have been, the bills they can pass have been Congressional Review Act, CRAs, and mostly on environmental protections that were put in place by the Biden administration. Can you just highlight a few of the actions by the current Congress that have been bad for the environment based on overturning actions from the Biden administration?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. I mean, maybe one to talk a little bit about is emissions standards. And so you touched on it a little bit earlier. You're talking in the context of an electric vehicle. You go whizzing right by a gas station, which is great. Well, look, I mean, emission standards. Here's the secret about what those are. Those are, so life is cheaper for us. You get better car mileage. So you have to fill up less. And again, transition to EVs, to electric vehicles, of course, we need to be doing that. But there's a lot of gas-powered cars out there, and there's going to be a lot of gas-powered cars for at least a while. Okay, so let's make sure they're as efficient as possible. One, it's a money saver for consumers, for all of us, because you're just getting better gas mileage. So you're going to the gas station less frequently. That's one. And then two, of course, is clean air. I kind of breezed on through some of the, progress that we've made as a country over the last 40 or 50 years, environmental progress. I mean, and I mentioned clean air. Again, I grew up in Colorado, and in the winter, I won't get into how it happens, but basically dirty air gets trapped right over Denver. Okay. And I would walk out, smog, and I would walk out as a kid going to school, and you'd see this brown cloud layered over the city. Well, we've largely tackled that. This wasn't just unique to Denver. If you're thinking, well, I don't live in Denver, I don't care. There were smog and dirty air alerts all throughout the country because, in significant part, we just had cars that were inefficient, that got lousy gas mileage, that were just puffing and polluting the air. The air's not as clean as it needs to be yet, but we've made such great strides because car emissions have improved so much. That's because of things like the Environmental Protection Agency. It exists to protect human health and the environment. They have to follow the science. That's what they're designed to do by statute. I mean, I know you know this, right? And so to walk back those protections, this Congress, I mean, to unwind those, that is again, another significant problem, another reason that we need to educate people about what this Congress is doing to hurt clean air, clean water, and tackling the climate crisis.
Let's just turn this conversation for a little bit to if things could be different in Congress and the White House, what are the proactive pieces of legislation, pieces of policy that we need to be talking about and getting ready for that opportunity?
Yeah. I love that you asked that question. Thanks very much. We have to go back on offense in tackling the climate crisis and making life more affordable for everyone in this country. And so that's clean energy and the clean energy transition as we move that direction. So whether it's tax incentives, at the individual level to put solar on your roof, or efficient windows, right? I'm not from Wisconsin. I've made that clear, but it gets cold in Wisconsin in the winter. I'm pretty sure I'm on safe grounds when I say that, right?
Yes, the Visitor Bureau doesn't want to get that message out, but I think you're right.
All right. Well, I don't think I've really kind of betrayed anything there. Let's get some more efficient windows. Again, what are we doing? We're saving people money, right? So and we're doing good environmental progress along the way. So that we need to do. There's more public lands protections to put in place. Again, a lot of it is going to be to unwind what this administration has done. So we're doing a much better job of protecting our waters. And Great Lakes included, obviously. We're tackling PFAS. That needs to get done. You talked about that keeps getting stuck or has been stuck, I know, in the Congress. So those are just a couple of the items with a different, leader in the U.S. House and a different leader in the United States Senate. And then obviously, in the White House as well to sign things into law. Yeah.
And what's your advice to people who are concerned about everything we've talked about this podcast and just concerned about the planet in general? What's the best way to take their values to action? Yeah.
Get active, and it can look a bunch of different ways. Call your member of Congress, and leave the office a voicemail, talk to one of your friendly staff, and say what you're concerned about. Because as you said yourself at the beginning of this show, members pay attention to what people are calling about. It matters. Call the office. Show up at an event. Maybe it's a big rally. Maybe it's a town hall where a Republican who voted for the reconciliation bill isn't willing to show up because he or she is afraid to face their constituents. Can you imagine that?
I know.
Can you imagine being scared to face your constituents because you took a vote that is bad for them because it's going to make their life more expensive? Show up at that event. Lift your voice up there. To talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends. Don't be scared. I know that this country's divided. I know that we don't all agree. You don't have to get in a fight with your brother-in-law. You just have a conversation. This is where my values are. This is what I'm concerned about. I'd like you to think about it from this, start to do that. Be, for people that spend time online, it's a great opportunity. Share, make sure it's good, solid post, League of Conservation Voters, something out of your office, for example. Share good information so people see it, and we're raising the visibility of these issues. The only way out of this is for us just to stand up and say, this isn't what I want Wisconsin, I want America to look like. And I'm going to be a part of saying, I want something different when it comes to protecting our air, protecting our water, and tackling the climate crisis. And that's what people need to do.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Well, Pete, thank you so much for being with us. How do people follow you? How do people follow League of Conservation Voters so that they can share that accurate scientific information with their friends and family?
Absolutely. Well, we're on Blue Sky at LCV Voters. You can follow me at P Maysmith. You can go to our Instagram, just search for LCV or my name, Pete Maysmith, and you will find us on and many other platforms, not just those two. But follow us. We're putting out a lot of good content that is along the lines of this conversation. So we'd love to have folks come out and get to know us more. And I just want to say, again, thank you very, very much for your leadership. You being in the House, being the kind of champ that you are for clean air, clean water, tackling the climate crisis. That's how this is going to get better. And we are deeply thankful for all that you do. And we're proud to be longtime allies and supporters of you, and certainly will remain as such.
Yeah, well, thank you, Pete. Yeah, I'm kind of like you. You got lucky because you were living in Colorado. I live in Wisconsin, another beautiful, beautiful state
Yep.
that, we rely on having, clean air, clean water, all the resources for people who enjoy the outdoors. And, sometimes I think we're very privileged to live in some very special states.
Well, you're certainly right about that. And another way, just thinking about Wisconsin and your special state, and it's such a beautiful place. The times I've been there, is also think about our local affiliates and
Yes.
connecting. I mentioned Wisconsin Conservation Voters; they do such great work at the state level, working with the legislature, the governor. Both on the public education side, they do elections too. They work on all these issues that we've just been talking about. Obviously, some of them at a very direct and local level for Wisconsinites. So Wisconsin Conservation Voters, another amazing resource that I would encourage your viewers to get to know more.
Yeah. And Pete, by the way, one of the things they did, and I think they shared it with your other partners around the country, but they were literally knocking on doors, letting people know about the benefits they could get out of the federal law to do all the things we talked about around clean air and clean water, and new windows and insulation and solar. And I thought that was one of the smartest things I've seen happen in a long time.
Yeah, it was great. And Carrie, the woman who runs Wisconsin Conservation Voters, really, conceived of that. Called us up and said, hey, we want to do that. Let's work together with LCV. And I talked about our conservation voter movement. Let's find some money and, because we can pay the staff and go out and do it and go out and talk to folks and just educate them about the benefits of, cheaper, faster energy, which is renewable energy. Yeah, for sure.
Well, again, thanks so much, Pete. We really appreciate the conversation today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And best of luck with everything you're doing. Thank you.
Appreciate it.